Okay, it's been a while since we learned together over here the words of Rabbi Tatz in BECHIRA and Free Will. And if you'll recall, the last thing that we were learning was the male-female relationship, which is a really inside every single one of us. And that is, as we pointed out, that the male is always the giver. He's the one that has, like, what he left off was like the spark of conception. And the woman receives that, but everything really grows inside of her. Just the example of conception and birth. And that is, the man gives over the seed, which is, he's calling the spark of life. And the woman and her eggs receive the seed, and then she has the womb inside of her. And she cares for that child for those 9 months. So a man he has initial creativity, initial sparks of life, but the woman is the one that has the real faithfulness. She's the one that endures the 9 months. She's the one that goes through the pains of labor and so on and so forth. And it's important that we have both of these parts inside of us, which is going to be part of our BECHIRA. On one end, we have to have the inspiration. We have to have the excitement. We have to have the enthusiasm to do something. But whereas maybe by a man, sometimes it wears off rather quickly. The female side is that it stays committed and doesn't abandon the idea and doesn't leave the thing behind. Right? The mother bird is the one that sits on the eggs. The father's often who knows what. The mother is the one that is housing the child inside of her womb for the next 9 months of her life, and she's going to live with all of the aches and all the pains and all the discomfort and everything. So within our world of BECHIRA, you have to have both sides. Number one is, I have to be inspired. I want to accomplish, but I have to be consistent and be faithful and not abandon that and leave that. So he brings down a fascinating story, which is brought down in Chazal, and it's a long story. I'll go through the main ideas of the story. He quotes it over in English. It's brought down in the Gemaras in Hebrew, but we'll go through it in English. And he says that there was once a young woman who was going to visit her father. And as she traveled, she got a little bit lost, and she strayed into the wilderness, and she fell into a bore. She fell into a pit. So this is the story known as the bore, the chulda, the pit, and the chulda and the weasel. It's the pit and the weasel, and the story goes on like this. She began crying for help, 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 and there was a young man that happened to be passing by the pit, and he hears the cries of this damsel in distress. So he looks down at the pit, and he asks her, "Who are you?" And she said, "I'm a young Jewish woman on my way to find my father, and I fell into this pit." Now, the guy that was walking on the side of the pit happened to be a Jewish man himself. And then he asked her, "Are you human? Like, are you a robot? Are you human? Yeah, you have to press the button over there to make sure they know that you're not a robot." Meaning, it's possible that there's something called shadim, which are very dark, negative, spiritual, demonic creatures that can sometimes be found in the dark lurkings of this world. He wanted to make sure that it was really a human being and not one of these creatures, because he may put his life into danger. So she said, yes, she was. So he said, swear on it. Now, why did he swear on it? Because it's well known that those dark spiritual creatures, they can't swear using God's name. They don't have the ability to do such a thing. So if she would swear using God's name, he would know then that this is a viable Jewish woman who's a real human being. Okay, so she did. So then he said to the following: "If I rescue you from the pit, will you marry me?" And she said yes. He lifted her out of the pit, and he wanted to consummate the marriage on the spot. "You said you'll marry me, let's get married." She said, "No, right here, without a chasana, without a wedding, without a chuppah, without my parents around, can't do that. That's not appropriate." She said, "You know what, let me go back to my town. I'll tell my parents I'm getting married. I'll prepare. You'll come in a month or so, a couple of months. We'll have a beautiful wedding. It'll be everything that you ever dreamed about. You bring your parents and your family. It'll be amazing." So he agreed. Fine, it's a good idea. Why get married over here in the middle of the woods with nobody around? Let's do such a thing. So before they parted, they decided to seal the deal of their marriage. And they had to make a promise to marry each other. But in order to make a promise, you need witnesses. Now, there were no witnesses around. There were no other human beings around. The only two agents that they had available were the boar was this pit, and there was a weasel that was hanging around watching all the things. So he said like this. They used the boar and the pit and the weasel that was there. Those they swore in front of them, and these are our witnesses that we are going to pledge allegiance to ourselves. We're going to get married. I'm going to go home, he said, to my town. You go to your town. I'll see you in a couple of months, and we'll get married. And that was it. The girl goes home to town. She gets so excited. She tells her parents, the man saved my life. He's such a wonderful person. This is who I'm going to marry. We made a pact with each other. Let's start preparing for the wedding. And the man himself ends up leaving the forest, and as all good men, out of sight, out of mind, he forgot all about this girl. Goes back to his hometown, totally forgets that he made this pact, this agreement. He doesn't even think about it. He's an eligible bachelor. He meets a beautiful, stunning, wonderful lady in town, and they get married. So the girl is by herself in her town, waiting for him to come back. He doesn't come back. And this guy's going on, and he ends up getting married. So they end up having, his wife gets pregnant, and she gives birth to the first child, and that child falls into a pit and dies. She gets pregnant again. She has another child, and one day, as she's walking along with the child, a weasel comes out of nowhere and consumes the child and kills that child as well. And she says to her husband, what's going on over here? This is very bizarre. We have two children. One dies in a pit, and one dies by being bitten alive, being bitten by a weasel. What's going on over here? And suddenly he hears the words boar and chulda, the words pit and weasel. Ooh, I just remembered what happened so many years ago when I was walking in the forest and I saved this woman out of the pit, and we promised we're going to get married to each other. I totally forgot about it. And she said to her husband, I want you to divorce me right now, and you need to go back to that woman over there. And that's why these things are happening to us. So he divorces his wife, and he goes back to the town that he remembered that the original woman that he saved from the pit lived in. And he comes into the town, and he finds her father. And he says, I'd like to see your daughter. He says, my daughter? Ay, what a tragedy. And he says, she was waiting and waiting and waiting for this man to come and marry her, and she went crazy. She's insane. Anyone that comes near her, she starts screaming and yelling. She acts like she's a mad woman. She says, there's no reason to go see my daughter. And he looks at the husband and looks at the father, and he says, no. I need to go see her anyway. And he comes to the house where she is, and she starts acting very violent, and she's screaming and she's yelling and she's acting like a maniac. And he looks at the woman, he says, Bor v'chulda, the pit and the weasel. And suddenly she recognizes that he's the one that saved her from the pit. And she looks at him and she says, you should know, I've been acting insane all of these years because I didn't want anyone else to marry me. Because when we were standing by that pit, you promised you're going to marry me, and I promised I'm going to marry you. And lo and behold, they got married, and they had children, and they lived happily ever after. Says Rabbi Tatz, what is the purpose of this story? Fascinating tale. What is the purpose of this story? And he says it's the exact story of the power of the male and the power of the female. And that is, the male wants clarification. He walks past the pit and he says to her, who are you? Oh, you're a Jewish woman? I want you to swear to it. Okay, you swear. And even when he swears, he makes sure that there's going to be some, he's ready to go and right now consummate the marriage. He says, no, we have to wait. Says Rav Tatz, there's no gap between decision and action. Right away, he's all ready to do. Everything is clear. Everything is present. I'm ready to do it in an instant. However, but the staying power, which means that he's going to be faithful and endure, that he writes in the man, he doesn't have that. Without a woman, none of his energy would come to fruition. His power is concentrated in the moment, and it dissipates immediately. That's what we see from the story. He's gung-ho, he wants to marry, he's ready to go. We just have to wait. Okay, we have to wait, fine. He goes off. This is why in the Jewish world of shidduchim, of boys and girls that are going out with each other, it's a whole different thing that goes on in the secular world. There's no touching, there's no kissing, there's no hugging, there's nothing physical. It's all here and here. Is it the right one or not? And we try always not to have too many breaks and gaps in between the dates, because we don't want the guy to lose his excitement and his fires of enthusiasm that are going on in the dating process. We want to keep things moving along in the right way. So, but the female, she doesn't need no clarification, no verification. She doesn't ask any questions over here. He's asking her all the questions. She gets out of the pit, and but she has what's called the staying power. Her dedication is supreme. Her commitment is going to be honored no matter how long or how illogical the commitment may appear over time. She goes back to her town. She's waiting for the guy to come. He doesn't show up. She begins acting insane because she said, I'm going to marry this man. She gave her word, and her word is reliable beyond measure. Her power stretches over time, stands strong long after the initial flash of clarity has faded. But he forgets instantly. She never does. Right? The famous husbands and wife. The husband is reminded. His wife keeps dropping the hints. My birthday is in 2 months. You know that, right? Yeah, of course. I would really like this year for my birthday. That piece of jewelry? Yeah, of course, sure. She comes back a week later. My birthday is coming up in 7 weeks now. He's like, yeah, of course, I remember. You don't have to tell me. I have it marked down. Of course I know. A few weeks later, my birthday, you took care of sure, don't worry. Next thing you know, she says, it's my birthday today. Is it really today already? I had no idea. Why didn't you remind me? She said, I was reminding you for the last 2 months. But the wife, she doesn't forget. She doesn't forget his birthday. She doesn't forget the anniversary. But when we forget, she'll make sure that we will never forget again, because she will remind us. Says Rav Tatz, these are two necessary applications of BECHIRA, of our free will. The male work of originating, creating in the world of potential, and the female work of bringing that origin to birth in the world of the real. You need both working together. I can have the intention, I can have the idea, I can have the excitement, but I got to bring it to fruition. Both parts of the mind must be integrated to produce a developed human being. Potential must be powerful, inspired, and total. That's it. I'm gung-ho, I'm going to do this. But without consistency, reliability, and commitment over time, then tenacious attachment to the work of bringing the potential into the actual, nothing remains. Meaning, we have two parts, which he's calling the male and the female. I don't know, it's the yin and the yang. I don't know, that's how you would say it, maybe in that kind of idea. But there is the initial sparks of the ideas, of the enthusiasm, of getting excited about doing something. But then there has to be the way that you're going to carry it out. Right? The best laid plans go to waste. That means that you could have all the plans in the world, all the things that you want to accomplish, all the things that you want to do, but if you don't have to follow through, it's never going to happen. In the world of BECHIRA, in the world of free will, it's no less. That means that when I make a decision to do something, unless I have the follow through and I'm faithful to my original cause, so then I'm going to end up with nothing at the end of the day. I could dream, I could plan, I could hope, I could do all these things. But if I don't do something about it, it's never going to happen. And he's saying those are just in the world. This is really Kabbalistic ideas, but in the world, in our own essence, it's the male and female components that are in there. Just like a male gives the seed of life, and the woman is the one that stays faithful to it and takes care of it for those 9 months, and then even afterwards, she's the one up in the middle of the night. She's the one that has the power to nurse. She's the one that's going to be taking care of the baby. So too, the man has to have an element of that as well. I'll be faithful and committed to my initial excitement and my enthusiasm to make sure that at the end of the day, it's not that nothing remains, but rather that the accomplishments remain because I followed through with what I desired to follow through with. Okay, we'll stop over here. Yes.
So everything is the living world. I can read it that way, right? The woman is truly a partner with Hashem in creation, insofar as she's not, the male is not so much, but she raises the child, she civilizes the man, she civilizes, you could say women civilize the world, but civilizes the man, so to speak, and it's that initial spark, but Hashem is the one who's constant. Hashem is the one who's committed to whatever mankind is. Otherwise, the Jews ultimately are Hashem's child, or Jewish people are as if his wife. So it's for us to civilize the world. Ultimately, that's why the Jews are here. We're here to civilize the world. We're here to. That's what Hashem wants us to be doing.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so Wednesday there will be class, and then I'm planning to be out of town from Monday to Monday. So then there won't be class the next 3 weeks. The next Wednesday, yes. Monday, Monday, no. And then Wednesday again, God willing. So, yeah, I'll let you know.